Hello and welcome back to our Reset series, Breaking Ungodly Soul Ties. I thank God for you and I thank God that you're able to join me today. Last week we started looking at the question, how can I know that ungodly soul ties are present in my life? And if you watched the video from last week, I talked about one of the areas that affects a lot of Christians is unfulfilled realities or unfulfilled prophecies or promises from God. And so I'd like you to watch that so you can pick up from where we left off last time, and then you'll follow through with what I'm about to teach today. So again, just to reiterate what I said last week, if soul ties are present in your life currently, there are some indicators that you can use to actually be able to recognize the type of soul ties that are causing trouble in your life. But also to just remind you that not all soul ties are ungodly, and I shared that in the last video, the marriage covenant one between Adam and Eve, and also the between Jonathan and David. That was the relationship or relational soul tie, and that was godly. Ungodly ones, I've said in the previous videos that it's, similar to the one between Shechem and Dinah where he raped her, and it established an ungodly soul tie. Now today, I want to talk about another indicator that affects most Christians, and this is when you feel, emotionally dead. This is a very strong indicator of a presence of a soul tie because it's a dangerous one. It's a dangerous sign if you don't recognize that it's operating in your life. Now, what do I mean by this? People who feel emotionally dead are those who are unable to receive or interact emotionally with others. They often feel lifeless, or they feel dead on the inside, and they slowly begin to pull away from people. They pull away from life. They pull away from others, and mostly they isolate themselves from family. They even isolate themselves from friends, and they just, want to gravitate to a world of their own. And so a lot of times people who are dealing with this, they don't know that that's what it is. And, there's different terms that I used out there in the world, in psychology for what that is. But from a biblical perspective, there is a soul tie operating in that person's life, and so usually when a person shuts down emotionally, it means that they're not capable of dealing with reality. It means that they'll engage, some of them might even engage in what is known as fantasy living. Now, although a lot of times when we hear of the word fantasy, we think that it has, sexual connotations. Part of it is true. Yes, sexual fantasies are part of soul ties. We'll talk about that when we discuss sexual soul ties. However, we can't limit it to just sexual fantasies because it leaves out many other factors, many other issues that are just as important and as concerning. Now, let's use the word fantasize. The word fantasy is one which it comes from the same root word where we get phantom. And phantom means something apparent to sense, but with no substantial existence. So this means that a person can engage in fantasy and not necessarily be aware that there's a soul tie operating in their lives. And there's variety of outlets or avenues that one can engage through fantasy. For instance, one that is huge in our nation is the use of prescription and non-prescription drugs. These drugs, when people take them, they cause them to be numb to the world. Now, I'm not talking about taking drugs when you have an illness, you've gone to the doctor and they've prescribed some prescription medication. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are addicted to such things like prescription drugs or non-prescription drugs. You'll find that these type of people, they are dealing with a problem, and we don't usually recognize that because we look at the symptom, which is they're addicted to this drug. But we don't look at the root cause of why they're addicted. And a lot of times in a person like that, there's a traumatic experience or emotional pain that they don't really know how to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so what they do is they use the drugs to escape their pain. And so We have also alcohol. Most people who use alcohol use it as a means of escape, and then they later develop this habit of drinking a lot, and then we start labeling them with names as alcoholics or drunkards or whatever. But if you take time to discover what is at the root of their problems, they're either dealing with brokenheartedness, or they're dealing with some type of grief or loss. It could be loss of a job, a loss of finances, loss of a loved one. It could be that they're depressed, or they're going through a divorce. There are many different things, but from a biblical perspective, they are dealing with an ungodly soul tie. I've even heard where the term that some of these people are said to have a disease. If you look at it from the natural perspective, it might look like they have a disease, but from the biblical perspective and from deliverance point of view, there is an ungodly soul tie operating in their lives and is causing them to do or to act out this way. These individuals are not, as they're labeled based on the biblical perspective. They're not drunkards. They're not alcoholics. They are just dealing with a soul tie. It's a spiritual thing, and they don't know how to deal with it. They have a condition of being incapable of coping with the reality of their own lives. And unfortunately, the more drugs or alcohol that they consume, the more their bodies crave for it in order to maintain a level of euphoria that they initially experienced, and then it results in this, what we call the drug or alcohol abuse. Now, if you heard what I said the more their bodies crave. I used the word crave because if you recall when I used the scripture of Dinah and Shechem, where Shechem raped Dinah, what did the father say when he went to Dinah's dad? He said, the soul of my son longs for your daughter, or it's craving for your daughter. When we establish a soul tie, there's that craving. So the fact that a person who is on non-prescription drugs, or abusing non-prescription drugs or prescription drugs, or using abusing alcohol, that clearly indicates, because of the craving, they have to have more and more and more of it. That indicates there is a soul tie. From a biblical perspective, there is an ungodly soul tie that's causing them to want more and more and more. And so that's how you can tell that there is an ungodly soul tie operating. It doesn't it's not limited just to alcohol or drugs, also food. There are some people who are addicted to food, and if you go deeper with these people, you'll find out that they're dealing with some type of emotional pain or some type of traumatic experience or loss, and you'll find out that they can't cope with that, and so their coping mechanism is by eating. And so they get addicted to food and eat uncontrollably. They crave for it. That the word craving is what, again, we saw with Dinah and Shechem. Shechem's soul was craving and longing for Dinah. And so this is what happens in that instance as well. This person is craving and longing for more food and whatever, and they become addicted to it. And so that's another indicator for ungodly soul ties. I pray that you are blessed. We'll continue, and I'll share more with you next time when we meet again. Be blessed. Bye-bye.